Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Chantel, and today I'm going to be doing another of my bi-weekly wrap-up videos. If you're new here, or if you're a regular, you may have noticed I did skip a week. I just didn't do any videos last week. It was just, I took a couple of days off work as like a mental health staycation kind of thing, and I just kind of decided to take a break from everything for a few days, and it was really nice and it worked very well for me. And now I am back and I have another bi-weekly wrap-up for you, so that's great. I don't actually have a ton of books to talk about. I've finished basically the books that I was in the process of reading last time, and I've started another one. But that's okay. I do have a fair amount of things to say about a couple of these books, so, you know, it's fine. We're gonna get back into the groove. No big deal. So that's what we're gonna be doing. So in the past 2 weeks, I have finished, I was reading, I believe, 3 books last time I talked with you, and I have finished all 3 of them, so I'm going to talk about them. First of all, I have all these books like stacked up next to me right now, but I did finish East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I don't know that I have a ton to say about this book, but what I will say is that I continue to really enjoy Steinbeck. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this one, nearly as much as I enjoyed The Grapes of Wrath. I do think on balance, having now read both of them, as I said I would, I do think I personally prefer The Grapes of Wrath a little bit more to East of Eden, but I did find East of Eden to be a really great read as well. They're both like solid 5 stars. It's just a matter of personal preference that like The Grapes of Wrath is a little bit more my style of book, and East of Eden is still very good, but maybe isn't quite as much my thing. But I still do very much appreciate it. I really enjoy Samuel Hamilton, and I also really enjoy Lee as a character. I think pretty much everybody in the Voxer chat agreed with me, particularly on the point of Lee being a fantastic character. He's amazing. And yeah, I do really like all of the, personally, I like the biblical parallels. I can understand if someone is not familiar with the reference material, with the source material, that you might be a little bit like, why is this happening, or what is going on here? Because it is very much, this is very much a kind of almost a philosophical play on the book of Genesis. And if you're not familiar with the book of Genesis, then it might not always ring entirely true to you. So there are some characters that almost become more allegorical a little bit in some places, though to me they did all feel pretty human, I think. Even Kathy. I know there's some discussion of Kathy in the Voxer chat, and while I would say that I maybe don't necessarily agree with Steinbeck on his view of who Kathy is and how she became the way she is, like, I don't disagree that there are people like that in the world, right? There are people like that in the world. So, and Kathy did strike me as a relatively realistic person. Because, like I said, I think there are people like that in the world. Again, I don't necessarily agree with Steinbeck as to how they get that way, but they do exist. And I am being a little bit vague here just because spoilers, I guess. And I do think if you want to read East of Eden, I think you should, as I did, go into it with not too much knowledge of what's to come, because I think I got more out of it because of that. I didn't go in with very many expectations, let's say. And that, I think, was a very good thing for me in reading this book, if that makes sense. I don't know if I made sense there, but that's fine. I really enjoyed East of Eden. We are continuing with The Summer of Steinbeck. I haven't yet picked up the book, but I believe the consensus was that we would maybe try to read The Winter of Our Discontent in August. So I'm probably going to try and pick up a copy of that soon and get it started, which I believe was Steinbeck's final novel. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. So yeah, because I'm really enjoying Steinbeck. Steinbeck has kind of come out of nowhere for me this summer and become an author that I really, really want to explore more of. So that has been really exciting for me because I always love discovering new favorites, and Steinbeck is definitely a new favorite of mine. So that's cool. I did also finish reading Emma by Jane Austen. As I said before, this was a reread, so I don't know that I have much to say about it. I love Emma. Emma's a great book. I think it's super funny. It's super poignant. I think Emma is a great character. She has a great arc. That's what I really like about her as a character, is the way that she is growing and learning in all these ways. But also Mr. Knightley is growing and learning too, and they're finding each other through that learning process, and I really like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed my time with Emma. I had a great time. I read it to my best friend. We both, I think, had a really good time with it and enjoyed it a lot. So that's Emma by Jane Austen. If you haven't read it, I recommend it because I think it's really good and really funny. Jane Austen is always a really great time for me. To continue with my Jane Austen July reads, I also I've completed Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney. And I really, really had a great time with this book. I will say I don't normally go in for memoir. It's pretty rare for me to want to just read just a straight memoir of somebody's life, but I really found it compelling in the context of this book, where she's combining memoir and she's sort of talking in a memoir-like way about her own personal life and her own personal experiences in the context of doing this research and having this personal project of hers that she's exploring these authors that influenced Jane Austen. And I really, really enjoyed that combination. That really felt compelling to me. I devoured this book in like 3 or 4 days. Flew through it. I found it very readable, very interesting, very compelling. I found a lot of what she had to say about herself and her own experience of reading the way that she came to like romance novels. I found that very relatable and compelling because it reflected some of my own internal issues with how I came to romance as well. And also her discussion of the ways in which the canon has been shaped over time, I found really compelling and interesting. I like her take on the canon of the sort of the Western canon as sort of not something that necessarily needs to be completely discarded, right? I think she agrees that like it has its place and that it is useful in certain contexts, but first of all, it doesn't have to be a static thing. We can reevaluate things and remove them from the canon or add them from the canon, because that is what has happened, right? The canon is a thing that has developed over time by people who have decided that these are the great books of world literature, the great pieces of world literature. And so we've created the canon, right? we can change it too, right? It's changed over time, and we can continue to change it. It's a living, breathing thing that we can make changes to. So we can add books to it. We can take books away that we don't think are relevant anymore, or whatever. And also, it can serve as a good starting point for certain things, right? So if you're not sure where to start with classic literature or whatever, you can start with something sort of quote unquote canonical, and then you can sort of branch out in other ways as you find other things. So it can serve as a good starting point. But I think also her emphasis on developing your own taste and your own personal interests, I found really, really compelling. There's a lot of things about her book that inspired me, so to speak. I went into it with this idea that I would come out of it wanting to read some of the authors that she talks about. And that did happen. I definitely want to, I'm definitely even more interested in reading some of the authors that she has talked about in this book than when I started it, right? Like, I really want to read some Anne Radcliffe. I really want to read some Charlotte Lennox. I really want to read some Mariah Edgeworth. So that definitely happened. But I think a thing that I came out of it with that I didn't expect is that now I'm more inspired to start my own personal projects and my own personal explorations of different things. Not necessarily those specific writers that she talks about, but just the stuff that interests me. And so I really enjoyed that part of it, just like her encouragement of developing your own interest and your own taste, I think really worked for me and really sort of lit a fire under my butt to actually start working on some of these personal projects that I've been thinking about doing myself. And I think this book kind of came along at exactly the right point for me, for her to be like, almost like whispering in my ear, yes, you should start that, like that project that you're thinking about starting, you should just start it. You should just go for it. And so I really appreciate that. I also really appreciate her talk about her own reading journal and what she does with it and how she does it, because it encouraged me to restart my own reading journal. I think sometimes I get a little bit caught up on the reading journal thing with like the people who post on social media, like all these really fancy journals that they clearly spend hours and hours and hours setting up and using to keep track of things. And she was like, you know what? I just take a notebook and I write down the name of the book, what day I finished it, what format I read it in, and then I just write out my thoughts on it. And I was like, that's a good idea, because it's entirely a personal thing. The reading journal is totally different from the Storygraph or the Goodreads account, where other people can sort of see your thoughts and you feel like it's a form of social media, right? This is not social media. This is a thing that's just for me, and it's private and it's my own, and it's a good thing to have just as a record. And also it's gonna stand the test of time more than any kind of app or social media thing that could go away at any time, right? Storygraph, Goodreads, they could be gone tomorrow, and then everything we put on there would be gone. But this is gonna sit on my shelf for the rest of my life, and I'll probably get, passed down to the next generation of my family after I'm gone, and then further generations of my family will have a record of what I read, and I think that's pretty cool. So thanks, Rebecca Romney, for encouraging me to restart my personal reading journal. So like, I gave that book 5 stars because like it really did it for me. That was a really great read. So yeah. That's the books that I finished. The book that I'm currently reading is, it's today as I'm recording this, it's August 2nd, but I am still reading The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow, so this is my final sort of entry into the Jane Austen July thing. I'm very, like, sniffly and sneezy today because the air quality is really bad where I live today. It's very smoky. There's, like, fires or something going on somewhere, and it's making the air quality terrible. Anyway, so I'm in the middle of The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow. I have some mixed feelings about this, I think, and I'm only a little bit more than halfway through it, so I probably won't say too much about it yet. I will talk about it more in depth probably in another 2 weeks once I've finished, because I think in part this is because this is one of those books where the main character is clearly on an arc, and my opinion of her in the beginning of the book could be very different to how I'm going to feel about her by the end of the book. She's clearly on a journey, and I am along on the ride with her, so I'll discuss this more in depth when I'm finished with it. I will say this is very well written, which is good, and it does, to me, I would say it still doesn't feel like a Jane Austen novel because, again, Jane Austen has a very particular narrative voice that I don't think Janice Hadlow is even attempting to mimic, which is fine. I don't think I would want her to attempt to mimic that. So, like, I think it would be inaccurate of me to say that this reads like a Jane Austen novel, because it does not. But it is very well written, and you can tell Janice Hadlow obviously is very well versed in the time period. She knows when to bring in those little historical tidbits and things like that to make it feel like it is very much set in that time. This is definitely not like a fluffy Regency romance that's only sort of vaguely set in a particular time period, but isn't really concerned with historical accuracy. The historical accuracy level on this is pretty high, which I appreciate. I like a good historical fiction novel. So there is that. But I'm not going to say too much else about it because I want to finish reading it, get Mary Bennett's full character arc in my mind, and then I'll come back to you and talk a little bit more in depth about this. But yeah, so this is the only book I'm reading right now. I just have been focused on some other things in my leisure time lately, such that I haven't been reading a whole lot, so I've just been focusing on the one book, which is fine. But that's the only one I have to talk about right now, except for, like, and also I think some of it is just because all the other books that I want to read or want to start reading in the near future, everything I have on deck, so to speak, is pretty big and pretty dense, right? So, like, I really want to get to the next History of Middle-earth book, and these take me a while to get through because there's a lot to them. And also, I have to read Fool's Fate. Like, I have to. I just have to get to this, like, right soon. But it's so big. And also, like, I'd love to start another Historathon read, but, like, the only one I have is this book about Maria Theresa. And this is a project book, right? This is a project book. This is going to take me a really long time to get through. I'm going to definitely take my time with it. Not only is it this long, but it's in translation. So I just, I have to make sure I'm in the right frame of mind for it. So there's that. What I've been watching. I did see the new Fantastic Four film. I probably wouldn't have bothered with it except that Pedro Pascal is in it, and I'm really into Pedro Pascal right now, and he did a very good job. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I think it was a solid movie. It's definitely one of the more solid Marvel movies that has come out in the past few years. So I think it's enjoyable. I would not quite venture to say that, like, ooh, Marvel's back, baby, but it was a good time. I would not probably would not have bothered with it if Pedro Pascal hadn't been in it. So on that front, casting him was probably a good choice, at least in terms of my interest. And the only other thing that I have to say is I did acquire a couple of new DVDs because Criterion had their 50% off sale through Barnes & Noble, and I always try to grab a couple of titles when they have their 50% off sales. They usually have one once a year-ish, or maybe sometimes twice a year, and it's really hard to beat 50% off, especially with their 4K Blu-rays, which are normally like $50 a pop. So I always try to pick up a couple when they're half off. So I did. I grabbed Some Like It Hot, directed by Billy Wilder. I really like this movie. It's not, I would think, Marilyn Monroe's best role, but I do really like Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon in it. I really think that it's weirdly progressive, open-minded as far as the jokes go. Obviously, like, in the 1950s, two men posing as women is gonna crop up with a lot of misogynistic comedy and homophobic comedy, presumably. It's kind of baked in the 1950s, but there's actually a lot of sympathy around the two characters and how they deal with it, and I don't know, I really like Some Like It Hot. It's a good movie. And then I did also pick up The Shape of Water. This is a Guillermo del Toro film. Yes, it's famously the monster fucking film. I really love Guillermo del Toro in pretty much everything he's done. I really love, just because he always knows what he's doing. He always understands what he wants to do and conveys it effectively and stylishly. And The Shape of Water is one of my favorite films of his. So I grabbed those two to add them to my collection. Yeah, that's about all I've got for this one. We'll see how I do on some of those personal projects that Rebecca Romney so inspired me to try jumping into. Maybe next week I will talk about one of them in a video. I've been sort of ruminating on a few things and planning for a few things. I'm just like waiting for the right time to make a video about it. So we'll see. That having been said, what have you been reading lately? What were your best reads in July? I want to know all about the great stuff that you read in July, and movies that you watched, TV that you watched. Tell me about it in the comments. Leave a like if you want, subscribe if you want more, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.